And that's exactly what we're in the middle of right now here in the United States. So I addressed free speech. I addressed the violation of laws governing the executive. I addressed free press. But let's talk about how Trump is violating due process. Earlier, I noted how Secretary Rubio has used a McCarthyist 1952 law to silence the freedom of speech for foreign students who disagree with the administration over foreign policy. There was no due process for the students that Rubio disfavored, just as there was no due process for the Venezuelan immigrants Trump sent to El Salvador. Trump ignored the Supreme Court's 9-0 order to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Ignoring the Supreme Court's order is a huge flag that we are deep into the authoritarian takeover of our country. Due process, the words, may sound like legal mumbo jumbo, but it is the guardian of our freedom. That before you can take away my freedom, you have to proceed in a certain fashion that gives me the ability to defend myself and not be simply tossed into a van and deported from the country or tossed into a prison cell. You must follow step by step. That's the due process, and that's what protects my freedom. The guardian of our freedom, due process, keeps any one of us from being locked up by an offended strongman. I want to read two pieces about the threats to due process and what they could mean for all of us. The first is titled, "The Emergency is Here." It's an Ezra Klein editorial or opinion piece, op-ed. The emergency is here. The crisis is now. It is not 6 months away. It is not another Supreme Court ruling away from what's happening. It's happening now. Perhaps not to you, not yet, but to others, real people. We know their names. We know their stories. The President of the United States is disappearing people to a Salvadoran prison for terrorists, a prison known by its initials, CECOT. A prison built for disappearance. A prison where there is no education or remediation or recreation, because it's a prison that does not intend to release its inhabitants back out into the world. It's a prison where the only way out, in the words of El Salvador's so-called justice minister, is a coffin. On Monday, President Trump said in the Oval Office, in front of the cameras, sitting next to President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador, that he would like to do this to U.S. citizens as well. Donald Trump, word for word. If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people, every bit as bad as the ones coming in. He told Bukele that he'd need to build 5 more of these prisons because America has so many people Trump wants to send. Trump said, why? Do you think there's a special category person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too, and I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons. And then we have the private prisons. And some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. The Trump administration held the view that anyone they send to El Salvador is beyond the reach of American law. They have been disappeared from our country. They have been disappeared from our system and from any protection or process that system affords. Again, this is Ezra Klein's article. In our prisons, prisoners can be reached by our lawyers and by our courts and by our mercy. In El Salvador, they cannot. Names, stories. Let me tell you one of their names, one of their stories, as best we know it. Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia is from El Salvador. His mother, Cecilia, ran a pupuseria in San Salvador. A local gang, Barrio 18, began extorting the business, demanding monthly and then weekly payments. If the family didn't pay, Barrio 18 threatened to murder Kilmar's brothers, Caesar, or rape their sisters. Eventually, Barrio 18 demanded Caesar join their gang, at which point the family sent Caesar to America. Then Barrio 18 demanded the same of Kilmar, and in Kilmar, at age 16, was sent to America too. This was around 2011. This was what we mean when we say he entered illegally, a 16-year-old fleeing the only home he's known, afraid for his life. Abrego Garcia's life here seems to have been a life, and not an easy one. He lived in Maryland. He worked in construction. He met a woman. Her name is Jennifer, a U.S. citizen. She had 2 children from a past relationship. One had epilepsy. The other had autism. In 2019, they had a child together. That child, now 5, is deaf in one ear and also has autism. Jennifer was pregnant in 2019 on the day Abrego Garcia dropped off one kid at school, dropped off another at the babysitter, and drove to Home Depot to find construction work. He was arrested for loitering, asked if he was a gang member. He said no. He was put into ICE detention. The story gets stranger from here. About 4 hours after Abrego Garcia was picked up, and that appears to be the first contact he had with local police, a detective produced an allegation, citing a confidential informant, that Abrego Garcia is a gang member. Abrego Garcia has no criminal record, not here, and not in El Salvador. He was accused of being part of a gang that operates in New York, a state where he has never lived. Whoever produced the allegation was never cross-examined. When Abrego Garcia's attorney later tried to get more information, he was told the detective behind the accusation had been suspended and the officers in the unit would not speak to him. Abrego Garcia's partner, Jennifer Stefania Vasquez Sura, said she was shocked when the government said he should stay detained because Kilmar is an M13 gang member. Kilmar is not and has never been a gang member. I'm certain of that, she said. In June of 2019, when Abrego Garcia was still detained, he and Jennifer got married, exchanging rings through an officer separated by a pane of glass. Later that year, a judge ruled that Abrego Garcia could not be deported back to El Salvador because he might be murdered by Barrio 18, that his fear was credible. Abrego Garcia was then set free. Each year since then, he has checked in with immigration authorities. He has been employed as a sheet metal apprentice. He is a member of a union. He was studying for a vocational license at the University of Maryland. His last check-in with immigration authorities was on January 2nd. There has been no evidence anywhere offered by anyone that suggests Abrego Garcia poses a threat to anyone in this country. But on March 12th, Abrego Garcia was pulled over while driving, his 5-year-old in the back seat. He was told his immigration status had changed. On March 15th, in defiance of the 2019 court ruling, Abrego Garcia was flown to El Salvador and imprisoned at CCOT as a terrorist. That's the prison that was described earlier. The only way out is a coffin. The Trump administration, in its own legal filings, has said this was an administrative error. They themselves said they should not have done this, that it was a mistake. This is not just my opinion, and by my opinion, I mean the opinion of Ezra Klein, who's writing this article. I want to read to you from an editorial from the National Review, probably the country's leading conservative magazine. Here is the first sentence. The court fight over Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia is a most unusual one in that no one desires.
Biónica, China la biónica, salud. But listen, this pricing won't last. Raw material costs are going.
Court ordered the administration facilitate